My name's Lynn Underwood, and my training was in epidemiology, which kind of looks at patterns of disease, patterns of social situations, and then seeing cause and effect in patterns. And then I became more and more interested in measurement. How do you measure messy human beings? And how does that end up working for helping us to study human beings? And measuring the more soft aspects of the human being, things like stress and social support, and then moving in more recently into measuring spiritual issues that might be important for people. And in the context of a large measurement endeavor, trying to look at how would we measure religion and spirituality.
My name is Zach Warren, and I work with the Afghan Mulvaney Circus for Children, or also known as the Afghan Educational Circus for Children. It's based in Kabul, Afghanistan, but we also have centers in Herat, Jalalabad, Mazar-e Sharif, and Bamiyan, which is in central Afghanistan. I've been working with them since 2005. Yeah, it's about 8 years now then, give or take. And started with fundraising for them, and then I did administrative work. And but from the very beginning, I've always been a teacher of juggling. So they needed someone to teach juggling, and I started teaching juggling, and then unicycling, and then magic class after that. So I've been involved in getting them going in their juggling and skills, and it's a great way of engaging Afghan youth because it builds their self-confidence, and it's easy to everyone can juggle, everyone can jump right in. You don't have to have a certain qualification or a language or ethnicity, or you can be of any stripe, shape, color. You don't even need to speak English.
Я надеюсь, что такие встречи дают участникам возможность вместе анализировать, какие возможности для укрепления доверия между сторонами на данном моменте, чтобы отношения развивать между сторонами, между индивидуальными, которые на обеих сторонах живут, и они могут потом после таких встреч реализировать какие-то шаги по укреплению доверия. Например, вы скоро, наверное, узнаете от этих участников, что они уже провели много встреч между женщинами из обеих сторон. Вот это такой шаг по укреплению доверия. И другие такие шаги здесь обсуждаются, и я надеюсь, что еще больше будут реализованы.
My name is Pesmani Rakiza. I am the program director for Straight for Common Ground in Zanzibar, in Tanzania. I have been working in the field of conflict transformation for more than 12 years in different countries. Originally I'm from Burundi, and I started to work in the field of conflict transformation in my own country. Then I went to West Africa, where I spent 9 years in Guinea, Ivory Coast, and working also on the regional level, Sierra Leone, which include Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Liberia.
We're going to look at the case study involving the Naga people of Northeast India and Northwest Burma, particularly working on the India side, and deal with the situation of civil society and the role that civil society can play in peacemaking, and how to build up civil society for that role. I've been involved with the Nagas since 1996 in many different capacities.
The beautiful thing about the circus, actually, in Afghanistan is that most people believed in the beginning that Afghanistan shouldn't have a circus. It needs roads, it needs hospitals, it needs basic health care and basic provisions, housing and so on. And those are very easy things to measure, right? So you build a building and you have 20 units and so many floors, and you put that in your report that we built this building and it takes so many workers, so many days, and there's a sense of finality, completion, and you can look at the building and say, yep, that's what we did. But the circus builds the heart, builds the spirit, and it also does educational work. So it's a way of building the mind and building sensibilities which are not easy to put on paper, but yet are the essence of really development in a country like Afghanistan.
If you're talking about, I feel strength from my religion or spirituality, and someone talks about how that operates in their life, a woman in the inner city going home at the end of a day and just feeling totally wiped, and at the bus stop having to go home to her kids. And her religion, spirituality, give her strength to go through that. Somehow, even if we haven't been in that situation, it can make us think, oh, well, maybe there's something like that in my life too. Yeah. And sharing about that at that sort of deep level of spirituality, these kinds of transcendent, more than things in life, can help us to bond. And then you're seeing someone who has a very different belief system than you do. So you see, somebody who maybe is an agnostic or an atheist, and you maybe have a religious belief system, and yet you're seeing, oh, there's commonalities here.
So we come back a couple months later for Chiang Mai 3. Tensions are just off the wall. And I was working as a mediation team with British Quakers. So the Quakers and I, we get together and, okay, we got, 4 days. This is very, very difficult. Let's plan it very carefully. How are we going to do this? How are we going to unpack the feelings? How are we going to keep it from blowing apart? Trying to do it. Wati comes in and says, we're going to play football. And I said, what? What do you mean? Soccer, for those of you who don't know. And for the U.S. folks in the group. And I said, Wati, you know how, the feelings are. We're going to play football. And we had this argument with Wati, and finally he said, well, Wati's the boss. He's the one that's called us here. And Wati had also told the factions already, and so they'd all gone to the malls in Chiang Mai to buy sneakers. Okay, so we'll play football. Well, Wati was brilliant. What he did is he put all the political faction leaders on the same team. We had also the traditional tribal leaders from 3 of the key tribes. It was the Tongkuls, the Semas, and the Konyaks. And put them all on the same team. And then he distributed the peace folks on either team. And we went to this raggedy field somewhere in Chiang Mai, and within 10 minutes, you knew something profound had happened. These guys who'd been trying to kill each other, had been condemning each other, they are laughing together, they're pulling each other up from the ground, and they're working together for a common goal.
We have a women project where we empower. It's aimed to empower women emerging in politics. And we train the women members of the House of Representatives. It's very interesting, very exciting to see how everybody and among those women is willing to make a social change. At the same time, they need to be equipped in terms of skills, in terms of self-confidence on how they can apply, how they can communicate better, how they can respond to the needs coming from their constituencies, how they can also break down the perceptions around being a woman in politics. In some places where you have a male-dominated society.
Я думаю, что 20 лет войны и обоюдного горя – это достаточное время, и Сейчас мы должны сделать все для того, чтобы люди были приобщены к культуре мира, чтобы в их сердцах и душах был мир и покой, чтобы ненависти не было места. Мы два народа, которые живем рядом, и мы не должны постоянно ждать ножа в спину.
Мы имеем возможность встречаться с людьми разных профессий, говорить о конкретных проектах. И несмотря на то, что в наших взглядах существуют серьезные разногласия по поводу политических аспектов проблемы, и, наверное, эти разногласия будут и дальше, несмотря на это, мы находим очень много точек взаимопонимания, на которых строится затем дальнейшее не только наше личное доверие, но и ощущение, которое мы хотим пронести по поводу данного процесса, что этот процесс, он имеет какой-то такой зачаток, какое-то зерно надежды на будущее. Потому что в дальнейшем мы все хотим одного. Мы хотим того, чтобы было безопасное, мирное будущее, чтобы было взаимопонимание, чтобы было доверие, и чтобы мы могли строить свое будущее, даже несмотря на разногласия, вот в тех аспектах и в тех отношениях, в которых можно строить мирное будущее, мы это должны делать вместе, в любом случае. Потому что нас очень многое связывает в прошлом, и это означает, что есть надежда, что и в дальнейшем мы сможем как-то работать для лучшего будущего вместе.
So I'll tell you first the story of Abida, who is a young girl that learned to walk on stilts for the first time. She was, I think, an orphan, and she used to wear a headscarf very tight around her neck, like this, and very shy. And she learned to walk on stilts at the circus. And the stilts put her up about 2 feet taller than what she was at. And they're wooden blocks with bicycle tubing around her feet tied. And once she was up on those stilts, she changed from being this very quiet, shy girl to a very extroverted, boisterous, confident, shouting girl, telling her friends, look at me. And so she started walking around the circus, prancing around. She was taller than all the other boys and all the other girls and all the teachers. And after about 45 minutes or so, the teacher said, okay, Abide waqtas, it's time, you need to come down. And she said, "Nee," as in no. Mm-hmm. And she kept walking around on these stilts. And she continued doing that for several hours. Oh. After several hours, her feet started to bleed because of the way she was tied in, and they're just blocks of wood and rubber from bike tire. But she continued walking around, even still. And eventually she decided to come down. She decided it was time. And they undid her feet. They cleaned up the cuts and whatnot. But the point is, when you're asking what is the point of a circus, what is the impact of a circus, what prompts a little Afghan girl to walk on 2 stilts when they cause her body to bleed and be in pain? What is so powerful emotionally, psychologically, that would cause her to override that sensation just for the feeling of the thrill? And my answer to that question is that I hope she's developing this kind of emotional reservoir of strength and confidence. And throughout her life, she's an Afghan girl, eventually an Afghan woman. She's going to encounter a lot of difficult situations in marriage and throughout life as a woman in Afghanistan. So if she, as much as she can, if she can have an emotional reservoir of strength and confidence, she can go back and touch upon whenever she needs it. I think that's important.